Ford is recalling more than 11,000 new vehicles. Its 2013 Ford Escape SUVs with 1.6-liter engines pose a risk of the engine catching fire. The company is telling owners to stop driving the vehicles and call their local Ford dealer immediately. Loaner cars are being supplied in some cases while those Escapes are repaired. The SUVs only actually went on sale about a month ago or so.
And the Ford recall is just one of several recent problems with some major car manufacturers. Tim Richardson with the University of Toronto Automotive Business. He's a Toronto Automotive Business professor. He joins us with the details. So, Tim, let's start with Ford, because we just talked about it. So what specifically is going on with Ford?
Well, there's about 11,500 of these vehicles that have been produced so far. There's only about 5,000 been sent out to the dealerships, so there's about 6 or 7 still back at the plants. Of that 5 grand, only some of them are up in Canada, so we're talking just a few hundred. So just to give you some numbers. And of those few hundred, most of them are still at the dealerships right now. So the number of people driving around with these 2013s is actually quite small. The specific problem is the fuel lines could split, and then they obviously leak fuel. Now, they say that the problem is only vulnerable when the engine is running, and so they just want people to leave it parked. But in the meantime, there's these contingencies that they explained about. This is a problem that's new to Ford, but there have been a number of ongoing recalls that they've had. The brake master cylinder for the 2001 and upward Escapes and so on.
What about Honda now? Let's shift to them.
Yeah, the Honda situation. Yeah, that's a little bit different. That's the door handle cables. Could go slack and the doors could pop open. Can you imagine when you're driving, your door opens?
Not a pleasant situation to be in.
In both instances, what do you do?
Well, you contact the dealership. But here's one of the little challenges a lot of people don't know. Some of the large dealerships hoard the parts that they get from the manufacturers. So in the case of, say, the brake master cylinder that was another recall problem with Ford, they would buy up large quantities of these, some of the large dealerships in the large metropolitan areas, and the smaller dealerships in outlying or rural areas may not be able to get access to the part. So if you take your vehicle in and say, I expect it to be able to be repaired, you might be find quite surprising that the mechanic tells you we don't have the part in stock.
What does it do you think, to the brand name of some of these? You hear about this kind of recall, Ford and Mazda and Honda. I mean, not good for their images at all.
No, and of course, you've got social media weighing in on this as well. But generally speaking, there's so many recalls from all the different major manufacturers. The Toyota situation with the brake pedal, then you've also got other problems with the Escape floor mat sticking and other things like that, that almost on an ongoing basis, it kind of lays the level flat for all the companies competing in terms of brand adherence. So one of the things they try to avoid is these circumstances, but at the same time, since every major manufacturer has recalls, it kind of levels the field.
Tim, Todd referenced Mazda. We haven't talked about Mazda. I want to ask you, because I know that the National Traffic Safety Administration has received something like 99 complaints for the Ford Escape and for the Mazda Tribute that I think the throttle can stick and it can cause a crash. Even there's reports of even one death because of it, and yet there hasn't been a recall for Mazda. So why is that?
That's correct. Well, the problem there is that when your foot is depressed on the gas pedal and then releases, that the gas pedal doesn't release, so that you continue to surge ahead. There's a number of different reasons why recalls don't happen. Part of it has to do with litigiously sensitive advice that the manufacturers get, and others has to do with some of the political rules and regulatory environment. The situation of the 2012 Volkswagens, for example, those recalls had to take place because they were driving on tires that were not summer certified in the U.S. So there's a regulatory thing that they're not in compliance of.
Now, for the Ford Escape we were talking about
earlier. That's right, and the Mazda Tribute.
But for the Ford in particular, we mentioned that 11,500 are being recalled. I think only 4,800 have been sold so far, so that means all the others are still in the parking lots of the dealers.
That's right.
So what happens to those cars? They just get fixed, and then nobody, you might buy a new car and it's taken care of, you don't have to worry about it.
That's exactly what happens.
So you would never know if your car the car that you're about to buy had a problem beforehand, essentially.
No, actually, in this particular case, none of them will be released to new buyers unless the problem is fixed.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about buying a new car off a lot that's not been fixed. They just won't sell them until that's been dealt with.
Tim Richardson with the University of Toronto. Very interesting. You know your stuff, don't you?
Well, I just happen to have a son who's a Ford mechanic, and I happen to know one of these vehicles.
There you go. First hand. All right, thanks so much,
Thanks, Tim.